In Windchill, you can use change notices as part of the change management process. In a previous video, I had created a change request. In this video, I'm going to be playing the role of a change admin 1. I'm going to analyze the change request, and then after analyzing and approving the change request, I am going to create a change notice which will contain the tasks that I want to be accomplished in order to affect that change. Here I am in Windchill in a standalone web browser. I am on my home page. In another video, I added an additional bucket for my subscriptions, but I'm going to my task list. And I see in my task list, I have an assignment to analyze a change request, and I can click on the hyperlink, and it takes me to the change request. If I click on this link, well, it'll take me to the information about everything that wants to be accomplished in it. Here it lists the affected objects. Looks like it does not have any affected end items in there. And so this is the change request. Let me go back to my home page because, again, I want to go to the task where I analyze it now that I've reviewed it. And it gives you some instructions up here. It says, hey, to complete the analysis, read any special instructions that you have, review the information page of the change request in the subject, and then explains to you to complete the assignment, enter any comments in the field below, enter special directions for the next task in the special instructions field, blah, 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 blah. Let's scroll down here. Again, I've analyzed it. I decided, yes, this needs to be done. And you have two different ways of then approving the change request. You can put it on a fast track process, or you can put it on a full track process. And it's recommended that the majority of your change requests that end up becoming change notices go through a fast track process. When you use a full track process, you're going to need a lot more people involved in the process. You have something called a change implementation board, and typically a full track process is used when you have some kind of change notice that's going to be over some kind of threshold in terms of hours and especially dollars. If something is monumental, hey, rather than just having a single person create the change notice, you might want to have a whole group of people involved. And you'll notice that there are some additional routing options. So for example, you could choose clarify, and yes, I've had to use clarify sometimes because I've had people write change requests where there's just not enough information there and you want to go back to them, and for some reason I wasn't able to just call them on the phone or email them or instant message them to get the information. But you want to send back and say, hey, give me more to work with. And then you can choose reassign. So instead of you analyzing this change request, maybe you do not have enough technical knowledge to be able to assess whether this should be done or not. So for example, I'm a mechanical engineer. If something came up that was electrical related, I might reassign that to someone who knows more in that field. And you can choose to reject it. And then you have this review button where you can have other people weigh in on whether this should be implemented. So I'm going to use the routing option here for a fast track, and you can write in some additional comments in the section of, regarding any other additional information that you uncovered when you were analyzing this. But really all that you need to do is hit the complete task button. And so that was completed, and I'm going to wait a few seconds and then reload my web page. And now I have a task created in here to create the new change notice. So again, when I was wearing the hat of the change admin 1, I approved the change request. Now I'm putting on my change admin 2 hat, and I am going to create the new change notice. And if you want to, if you click on this, this will take you back to the change request. This will take you to the particular task. So I will click on the create new change notice. And just like before, you have the instructions up here where it says, hey, read the special instructions, read the information page. To create the change notice, complete the following tasks. Select new change notice from actions on subject menu on this task page. And here you can see there's the actions on subject drop-down list to create the new change notice. And again, to complete the assignment, you can enter comments in the comment field, click complete task below to advance the change request or save it to advance at a future time. Before I click on the actions on subject drop down, let me show you some of the other stuff in here. So here you can see the associated process, and this is the, what is it, the change request, I think. Oh, that's the problem report. Let's see, let's hit the back button. Okay, back to this page over here. So you can see that we have the task completion. You can choose complete task without actually creating the change notice first. Don't recommend to do that. Also, there is an actions drop-down list. Here's another place where you can reassign this task to create the change notice. Here's where you can accept it. Accept is typically used when you have a whole team of people who are assigned to the role. And this is very common at most places. You're typically not going to have one person who's a change admin to. You're typically going to have multiple people who are change admin to, and they will all get the task. By accepting the task, it will remove the task from all the other change admin 2s to make sure that you're the only person who is working on this. You can see that you can edit the deadline or open the task assistant. And so for the task assistant, hey, here you have the information in there. You know, it really doesn't do anything for you. Let me close out of there. That was added a few versions ago. But anyhow, actions on the subject. Let me go to new change notice. And here it is opening up the change notice in its own separate window. And so let's take a look at this. Let's make it a little bit wider, a little bit longer, a little bit louder now, a little bit softer now. Here we have the set attributes page, and so we can see that this is a change notice. For some reason in the drop-down list, it allows a different type of object in here. Here's a checkbox to automatically propagate the information. And by checking that, you'll notice that it refreshed and it automatically filled in the name for the change notice and added in the information that was in the change request, which I think was this information was propagated from the problem report. And so here for the name, maybe I want to change this. And this deals with, I don't know, some kind of circuit board, and I'm just going to call this solve chafing issue, and it's got a due date in here from last year. Let me change this to the current year. Let's go to 2021. I'm doing this at the end of January. Let's change this to February. Let's choose February 12th, which is like President's Day or something. All right, so there I have the need date in there. You can add an additional information for the description. Here we have it indicating that this is a fast track. Let's go to the next button, and this will take us to the implementation plan. So these are the different steps that we need to accomplish in order to implement this change. And you're going to need at least one change task in your implementation plan. So now let's click on the little suitcase with the star on it to create our change task. And then we have from the type drop-down list, let's choose that this is going to be a change task. I don't know what kind of custom object this is that was in my Windchill instance. And so for the first step, maybe I want someone to update the CAD assembly. So I'll just call this update assembly. And right now, the assignee and the reviewer are the same person. So this is assignee, this is the person that is going to actually do the work, and then you can have a person review the work. And then in here we can set a due date. Hey, let me go to February, and maybe I want to have this person do it in a few days before the actual change notice is complete. And if you want to, you could write some additional information inside of the description field if you need to tell them what to do. Let's go to next, and here we have the affected and resulting objects. And so for the affected objects, hey, in here you can add in the stuff that needs to be addressed. So I'm going to click on the plus sign in order to add those different objects. And let's see, for the context, let me search for the different contexts, and it's the one from routed systems. And I could tell that because this task was in routed systems. It's been a while since I looked at this information in here. And then for the number, okay, I had to do some browsing in order to figure out what I wanted to search on. And here I see the objects, and I see that there are some pending changes against a couple of these objects. Let's select both the CAD model and the WT part for it. Let's click the OK button. And so that way I have the affected object in here. And the affected object, you can see that showing the WT part. Let me change this to all so that I see everything. And once again, let me make this a little bit wider to show you something else that you have for the WT parts. So again, this is the enterprise part. And now you can choose the disposition of things that are on order against this particular version of this particular object, also the disposition for things that are work in progress, and also for finished objects. So for example, if something is on order, well, we could say that we want to return those particular objects. If something is a work in progress or process, you can choose to convert it, to return it, to rework it, service, scrap, or if it's not applicable, I could say, hey, let's rework those particular objects. And if anything is finished, you could use existing, you could repair, retrofit, scrap, or not applicable. And I could say, hey, let's retrofit those different objects. And then you could add in some additional comments inside of here. So again, I like to put those objects in here so someone knows what they are working on, and you can add other additional objects. You also have the ability to collect affected objects related to these different entities. So for example, if you wanted to grab the different drawings with them. Also, you have the ability to revise the objects from inside of here. The next thing that we have in here are the resulting objects. And you're really going to have to figure out how you want to work your change notice process. So my personal preference, I have the change notice with the change task for what I want to get done. And then when all that is done, then I like to use a promotion request in order to release the objects. Some people, some organizations, depending on how you do configuration management, you might want the objects to be released when these different steps are done. So for the resulting objects inside of here, let's once again use the plus button and let me search for the object. Okay, so here we have the object, and I can select it and then click the OK button. So now let's make this bigger so that you can see it. Let me drag it down over here and let me find some place. There we go. There we have a grab bar. And so here is the resulting object. And then you could select it in here. And from the actions drop down list, you have other different things that you could do. Like you could set the effectivity. And so for example, with effectivity, hey, when do I want this to take place? Let me make this a little bit wider. You have a few different choices for effectivity. So here I have this particular object for the effectivity type. Right now, this is set to date effectivity. You can also configure your system so that you have different kinds of effectivity, like you could do it by lot, or you could do it by serial number, or you could do, I think you can even combine some of those different things. So that's what effectivity is. Let me cancel out of here. And then another choice that you have is that you could set the release target. So for this particular object, oops, no common release targets found for this particular object. It's not allowing me to set a release target. But again, that's if you are choosing to release objects from the change notice, you could do that but I'm going to hit the minus sign. I'm not going to have any resulting objects inside of here. So let's hit the finish button. And so here I have the task to update to the assembly. Let me just create one other additional task real quick. Change task. And maybe I'm going to have, pretend that someone else is going to update the drawing. Pretend that I'm assigning it to someone else other than me. And at this point, you could just hit the finish button. You don't have to add in the objects in there if you don't want to, if that's not your process. So here I have the two different tasks. If I go to the set attachments, well, you can add in additional attachments. So for example, maybe you want to attach a report, or maybe you have a picture of the problem. You are also allowed to add an attachment that is a URL or a web page. And then there's another kind of attachment for external storage. And this is basically where you're telling someone someplace in the real world to go. So for example, let's say that you have something that breaks in the field and it gets returned to you and you're storing it, and you could say, hey, this is located on this shelf in this room, on this floor, in this building, if the engineer or the designer needs to lay physical hands on the component in order to figure out what they are going to do. And then there's this other one in here for association. So right now this is associated to this particular change. This is a change request. If you wanted to, you could add other different objects. So for example, if there are other related problem reports or change requests, you could add them in here. And the reason that you could have multiple change requests is that you could have multiple change requests that get wrapped up into a single change notice. In other words, N to one. You could also have one to N. You could also have one change request that results in multiple change notices. So for example, let's say that you are an automobile manufacturer and this assembly is used in multiple different vehicles. Maybe you're not going to cover this change under one single change notice for every single line of vehicles that you make. Maybe for your sports car, you're going to have one change notice. For your SUV, you're going to have another change notice. For your coupe, you're going to have another change notice for that. So again, the relationship between change requests and change notices can be 1 to N or N to 1, or in this particular case, I am doing 1 to 1. So this is everything I need for the change notice. Let's click on the finish button. And now we get this confirmation window. You can either submit now or submit later. And the reason that you have this is that sometimes it might take you a few different sit downs in order to finish this change notice. It might have a lot of work involved in it, so you might be doing a little bit of work now. You need to find some more information, and so you might want to just pause creating the change notice, and that's what this does now with the submit later. But I've got everything filled in. Let's click on submit now. And the object was created successfully. Let me close the little toaster pop-up. Let me go back to my tasks. And here I have the assignment to create the new change notice. We'll actually create it. So let's go inside of here. I don't need to go to actions on subject. I can just complete the task, or maybe I want to write in here the name of the change notice that was generated, but it's right here. Let's hit the complete task button. And the reason that the task was in there again is that I might need to create a different change notice if I want to do it for a different product line. And since I was the assignee, here you can see the different change tasks that I need to do in order to affect this change. So what I showed here was creating a change notice from the actual task I was assigned to create the change notice. That was the result of me actually doing a task that I was assigned. I want to show you that there are a couple other different ways that you could create change notices. Let me browse. Let me go to one of my other products. Let's go to the folders. Let me go to engineering, and I'm going to look for, hey, here I have this particular object. Let's click on the hyperlink to get to it. So here's a CAD assembly. I can go to the Actions drop-down menu, and then we have New over here, and New Change Notice. And again, you have to have the correct role assigned to you in order to be able to create a change notice. And also, it depends on how you have configured Windchill. At some places, they require that you do a change request before doing a change notice. I like the freedom of being able to jump right to the point of just creating a brand new change notice from an object. And so, for example, when I was in the military, sometimes there would be something called VOCO, verbal orders of the commanding officer. Man, hey, you just do it because the boss said for you to do that. You have the same thing in the workplace. Sometimes you are building something up, and then when the vice president walks by and says, hey, that's wrong, I want this to be different, so it's like, we're going to implement the change. I don't need a change request. I had someone high up tell me that this had to be done. I'm going to go right to the change notice. So again, you can create the change notice right from the object. Let me cancel out of here. And so in addition to doing it from an object information page, here I am just in a folder. If I go to the Actions drop-down list, and I can go to New, and you can see all the different commands that I have inside of here. But here I can create a new change notice right from a folder. So you can use any of those different methods to kick off the change notice as part of your change management process. I hope you enjoyed this video. For more information, please visit www.creowindchill.com. If you learned something from this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you like this video, please click the subscribe button and ring the bell to be informed when new videos are uploaded. Thank you very much.